Welcome to the Greatness Garage Podcast, the place where small businesses get big answers. I'm your host, Brad Borkus, founder of Epitome Coaching and Consulting, and this is the Greatness Garage. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Greatness Garage, where you get to work on your business, not just in it. Today we got Doug Thorpe here. He is a wealth of information. He's been there, he's done it, and it's just going to be a great resource with some great stories. So I'm excited. Doug, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you. Tell the audience, tell the garage about yourself.
Hey, Brad, pleasure to be here, and always good to help out a fellow business advisor and coach. Yeah, about me, real quick. I'm a former banker, former military officer. I got into consulting and then ultimately coaching quite some time ago, coaching about 15 years ago, and it was a byproduct of all the other things. I realized the business leaders I was working with, either at the bank or in my consulting, always had a place, a time they needed to talk to somebody. They needed that independent set of eyes and ears to hear them out, hear about what they were wrestling with, thinking about, and doing. And that ultimately led me to the idea of becoming more of a coach and advisor than anything else. And been doing that ever since and love it and really enjoy the opportunity to work with folks of all business sizes.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so anything hot that you're working on right now, or any kind of really kind of fun that you're kicking up?
Well, I've got a couple of things going on. I am building a mastermind community. We are looking for business leaders that are in that about 3 million to roughly 20 million range. We're going to segment the groups depending on the size of your company, but we're blending not just classic peer-to-peer advisory meetings, but we're blending a little bit. We're going to allow business networking. This is primarily
Cool.
B2B operators that we're looking for. And I call it my elite group mastermind because it is a blend. And got information about it on my website at dougthorpe.com under the mastermind tab. You can hop over there. That's the big one right now.
Very cool, very cool. So we're gonna hop into. I'm so excited to go through this and just the stories that have come out with the amount of years you've had and the amount of listening you've done and stuff. I can't wait to hear what it is. So the first segment is, I wish I would have. And so, Doug, take it away. Tell us your story.
Well, when you sent me that question in the prep, I was thinking about a lot of different things, and part of my mindset in looking at that question is there something that is that in the category of regret? And
Hmm.
I wish I would have typically done something different. And I guess for me, the naked truth, honest answer to that question for me is I wish I had never married my second wife.
There
I
you go.
As a young man, I had my what I had hoped would have been my dream life. Got married out of college and had a couple of kids and thought things were going okay, and all of a sudden it wasn't. Um, my original wife wanted to find another guy to live with and not me, and I had to go through that. And I did the horrible rebound trophy wife play
Yeah.
and had no business doing that. It, you know, I don't know if she ever gets wind of this podcast. God bless her. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily wrong. It was just really different. It blew a giant hole in my trajectory of what I was trying to accumulate as personal wealth at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
basically created the need to start over at the age of 45. And
Wow.
that's not a neat place to be. And
No.
yeah, I wish I would have done that differently.
Well, and you said too, like I said, even it's not even so much about them, but it's about the choices we made, right? And it's the way that we
Right.
went through and learned. And I think, it's I'm hearing it just, correct in the reflection that you see, you see that you snap to judgment, that you found that missingness or that longingness or that gap that you decided to fill it. And
Yeah.
instead of really being with, we call it being with the devastation. Instead of being with the devastation, you decided for the quick fix and regretted it for doing it, huh?
Well, and I think in the context of your show here, being able to be effective business leaders, I think you really got to gut check on your personal life,
Hmm.
and I'm
Hmm.
not saying that in a judgmental way. I'm saying it as a cautionary tale. I mean, and I see this in a lot of different places. People make choices about their life partners, and sometimes it's got some devastating effects on the business and the wealth you're maybe trying to generate.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you see it and you hear it time and time again where, that right spouse will support the growth and the abilities and the dreams that you're trying to do, and together you can accomplish so many things, and just the opposite is true, and it's just really saying, pick your partner wisely, and that really fits not just with your spousal partner, but also business partners. I see so many people get into business with partners that, oh, they really like them, or there's something quick, they like them, oh, it's a buddy, we've been friends, and it blows up on them, and I've
It
seen that, and I've
does.
had
You're
to
right.
unravel that before, and it's a messy thing, so
It is. Yeah,
yeah.
it is that choice of picking wisely the partner you want to pursue. And, you're right. It does have business ramification for sure. Simply in the context of who you want to maybe go into business with, that is
Hmm.
huge. And by the way, for the record, I did take a third bite at the apple. I did meet someone many years ago. We've now been married 25, coming up. We're in our 25th year. So,
Wow.
and she's very supportive, has been done a lot. In fact, not long after we got married, we actually opened a company together, and we
Hmm.
not only were we kind of newlyweds, but we were now, business partners, and it
test
worked.
that test that marriage right away, right?
No, it did, but it worked. I mean,
That's
and to
cool.
your point, you get it right, and it's just a
Yeah.
miraculous difference over what might have otherwise been.
Well, you say that too, and it helps me reflect on my mom and dad. Worked, unfortunately, my father passed away early at 60, but from the day they got married, they went for a weekend trip for their honeymoon, and the next Monday morning they were receiving boxes on their new business. And until the day he died, they were in it together every day. And my dad was kind of the idea guy. My mom was the support and make it work person. And it was a beautiful example for me to grow up in, and seeing what strong support through the thick and thin. They had some years where they were growing like gangbusters, and they had years where it was tight. And to really see that and be able to model that for each other and really galvanize with each other and build such a strong relationship, it's really kind of beautiful thing to
Well,
see. So,
Well, and I think you touched on that, and I know what my wife and I did when we went into the business. We had some good, earnest discussions about trying to identify sweet spots on where we could add the most value to the business,
mm,
and we drew some pretty bright, hot lines around the boxes on the org chart that, these were going to be mine, those were going to be hers, and we weren't going to mess with each other's stuff. And now, collaborate and coordinate, yes. But when it, came down to the final execution in each of those boxes, it was on each one of us independently to execute per our arrangement and agreement on how that was going to
yeah.
work.
So I want to step into that for a second, because that is such an aware, such a heady, such a brilliant thing to do. And so few do it, right? Like to be able to sit there and say, you've got your lane, I've got my lane. We've established what that was, and we just execute what we've already established. Like so much foresight and so much pre-discussion, and being able to have the kind of gritty conversation. Okay, no, this is, yep, no, okay, yes, we agree on it, and then go forward. How are you guys able to do that? I mean, I gotta guess you gotta give some credit to that second marriage that said, "Hey, this is what not to do." So now I
Right.
know on the side kind of what. How did you guys go through that? Because I think this is a beautiful thing to hear for all partnerships, for every business leadership, for all of that. How did you guys choose your lanes so beautifully?
Well, the business application of that idea actually came from our marriage application of what we wanted to do, because She too had been married before and so had some
Hmm.
experiences with some bad deals and learned a lot from it. And what we had said as we came together was, really, if you think about it, in this life and building a household together, there are things that ought to be yours and these ought to be mine, and we'll make some decisions. And it's fundamentally like, well, let's take buying a sofa as an example. Okay,
Hmm.
I might have an opinion about what I would like, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to let that be hers.
Yep.
I'm not gonna, and if she ends up going a different way over a certain kind of sofa, I'm not gonna hold it against her loosely, create a lot of
Yep.
anxiety and a lot of friction over it. Let's just, but you got to kind of intentionally lay that out in advance so it's not
Hmm.
a surprise when you get to that moment.
Well, and what I
And,
love, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, so we had kind of, if you will, compartmentalized how we wanted to be together as husband and wife and operate our household. And it's not to say we didn't talk about everything, but
Hmm.
again, when it came down to final decision time, it's like, no, honey, that's yours. I'm go
Yep.
with my blessing. That's what, if that's how you want to do it, let's do that. And I'm genuinely okay. And it's almost it borders on the notion of I don't care. And I don't mean that in
Hmm.
a bad way,
Hmm.
but I mean my attitude about it doesn't count and I'm
Yep.
okay. I
Well,
don't know if that makes sense
it
to what I'm
honestly,
saying.
it for to me at least, it really does. And one of the things I like about it is this: when you predefine that, it allows people the surrender almost to know that like when if I have an opinion on something, but it's your area, they know that they can take and add that opinion to their wealth of knowledge and also discount it and know that at the end of the day that is theirs. So my opinion is just an opinion, not a directive. And I really love when you get that clarity. There's a freedom in listening to someone's opinion because you're not pressed by it. You're just listening to it. And if you decide to pick it up, you pick it up. If you decide to leave it down on the ground, you leave it down on the ground. And so I really like what that does, and it gives that segmentation to know that at the end of the day, this is yours, and I'm not dumping it on you, and I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying you're the one that we've decided in this game plan. You got the final call there, and like it's funny. I talk with my wife. I've got opinion on everything, and she's right. I do, but at the same time, and it's not I don't care on the apathetic way. It's that I am okay and I am ambiguous to either way we go. I love you and trust you more than any other choice that's over here.
Yeah,
And so I
exactly.
hear that coming through. Yep, yep. So,
That's exactly it. You said it very well. That's exactly it. And on one hand, if you think about it in a pure business context, it's in my mind the perfect form of delegation.
yep,
It
yep,
it's I don't need to be in the middle of this.
yep,
And it's a choice. If you're the leader in the business, owner, founder, it's the choice to say, I don't have to have my fingerprint on everything that goes on in this business.
yep,
I'm going to find that person that's either my partner or my senior X, whatever, as in
yep.
X blank, fill in the blank slot, whoever they are in the business. I'm going to give them that latitude, and I'm
Yeah,
going to say, this is your rodeo. You go decide what we need to do, and even if it doesn't work out,
yeah.
the choice they make doesn't work out, I'm not going to punish them about it.
And that's allowing that beautiful space for growth, right? We all learn, we all make mistakes, and if we can be afford each other to that grace, what a beautiful thing. So, wow, what that a great segment. I think we all learned a ton from that, and well, this is only going to get better. So I'm excited. So as we roll on to the next segment, I've always think this one's going to be interesting, right? So you aren't going to believe this, Doug. Give us our story that we're not going to believe, and we're going to knock our socks off.
Story we're not going to believe. Goodness. I don't know. I feel blessed. I've been in the middle of so many different things. Uh, I guess I'll reflect on part of my consulting days. One segment of consulting I did for several years. I actually worked as a contractor for the FDIC when they closed banks, and when
Hmm.
bank fails, inevitably they fail for several different reasons. The most prevalent is some form of corruption or illegal
Okay.
activity, often is the case, even if the illegality is not properly disclosing to the regulators. That is a chargeable offense, by the way. But going in as the cleanup crew, if you will, after the wreck has happened, was what I was doing and the teams I would bring. And some of the things we ran into, you wouldn't believe. There was one I did in Puerto Rico, and part of the story of that bank failure, the bank had hired a guy to come in from New Jersey to be a pretty senior executive and clean up some things that at the time the bank was willing to admit were going wrong. Well, the guy got in there and started poking around and discovered some misappropriation of some money here and there and some other things, and was demanding that all that get cleaned up. And next thing you know, he was found dead on the roadside with 6 rounds in his body.
Oh, wow. He was
and
misappropriating the wrong people.
and so that was a couple of months before the bank finally formally was closed by the regulators and handed over to the FDIC. But part
Wow.
of our onboarding, if you will, was the contract team. We were literally told something that I had not heard since my military training. They told us, they said, don't go home the same way twice,
Wow.
which meant, you don't know who's watching. Just
Yeah.
be mindful, be careful, and find alternate ways to get back to your hotel at night.
You talk about looking over your shoulder. Holy smokes.
And that was a military training tactic that we had been taught. When you're in a hot zone, you don't want to create habits and
Yeah.
trod the same trails because enemy sets up traps for you. But yeah, that's what we were
Wow.
told, and I'm like, well, I hadn't heard that in a while. So
Exactly. What are we investigating? Like, holy smokes. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how like you look at like a lot of banks have set up well, are really set up for long term. But that actually gets me to ask a side question here. Because I saw what was it 9 months ago where Warren Buffett backed out a lot of his interest in some of the banks that he was in again, and you hear a lot of kind of like disruption. Are you concerned in the banking industry of what you're seeing in kind of the general market? Is there something like, is there some challenges or is it pretty solid?
no, I think we're in a current season where it's pretty solid. I mean, the last really big fail we had was Silicon Valley Bank out in California, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
had the former chairman of that bank on my podcast a couple months ago. Fascinating discussion. He had actually, for the record, he had actually left before all the demise, and
Gotcha.
he did have an opinion of what took the bank down, but and profess it during his watch they weren't doing any of that stuff. But
Yeah, yeah.
inevitably, bank fails are about making wrong decisions. One of the banks, it was a smaller bank I got involved in up in Oklahoma. The guy, the chairman of the bank, had gone long in some mortgage securities right
Mm-hmm.
before the
Mm-hmm.
crash of '08. Well,
Wow.
and if you remember the crash of '08, mortgage finance and real estate was a big part. It was almost the ground zero of that crash. And to be long in the mortgage market at that time was a horribly bad
Yeah.
bet. And he blew a $40 million hole in a $300 million balance sheet because of it.
Oh, oh,
And
oh, oh.
and the way he made it up was creating not so much fraudulent loans, but poorly written loans
Hmm.
to the rest of the masses in his bank. And give you a quick idea, the example, this was up in near Oklahoma City, and the I-30 corridor
Hmm.
that runs through Oklahoma City is one of the biggest, heaviest traveled trucking lanes in the country. It's the main
Hmm.
artery for
Hmm.
large trucking. So trucking industry was really big in that area. guys would come in, they had been truck drivers their whole life, and they'd say, Mr. President, of the bank, I'd like to make a loan, buy a rig, and start my own trucking company. And he would say, oh, you don't need one truck. You got to have three trucks if you're going to run a trucking company, or you need five trucks.
Yeah.
And he would make, instead of making $1 million loan to start a business, he would make five, six, and $8 million loans to a guy that was, and again, no
Yeah.
disrespect, but a truck driver,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Oh
guys
my
had no
gosh.
clue how to really run a trucking company.
Hmm.
And he had the bank balance sheet peppered with deals like that were just way overblown for what they should have been evaluated at. And so
Let
my
me ask this
team,
question. Did he logically think that he was going to be able to pull this through? Because like I even heard like when people do start Ponzi schemes, like a lot of times they think they're going to be able to get it to correct the current, right? Did he think that, or was he just trying to hide it as long as he could?
I think he was trying to mask it as long as he could. And part of the twisted story on that deal was this guy that had moved in as chairman had been a career-long, very well-respected banker. He had been president of the Oklahoma Bankers Association, and he wasn't a lightweight by any means.
Yeah.
But he made a bad bet with the mortgage deal, and the primary investor of this bank had been his college roommate at Oklahoma University,
Oh.
and he had been a successful oil man in the Dallas area and a movie producer. He was a
Hmm.
producer of great movies, Oscar-winning movies like Fargo or Argo. I mean, not
Hmm.
Fargo,
Okay.
but
Yep.
Argo, um, and several others. The guy was a billionaire.
Wow.
And what I told after I got in and got into the paperwork there and started looking at everything, I said to a bunch of the FDIC guys, I said, I know exactly what happened here. This guy, the investor, the oil baron in Dallas, was sitting in the men's club at his resort,
Hmm.
smoking cigars, drinking whiskey one night, and somebody said, "What bank do you own?" And he said, "I don't own a
Ah.
bank." "Oh, you got to own a bank. If you're a billionaire, you got to own a bank. Go get a bank." He gets on the phone and calls his banking buddy in Oklahoma. "Hey, do you have a lead on a bank? I think I want to buy a bank." And the guy said, "Yeah, yeah, I can help you make a deal. We'll do this. Let's do this together." And so, boom,
Ah.
guy
Yep.
makes a couple of $100 million investment to buy this little rural bank, independent, one shop, one
Yep.
location. And now he can sit with his bourbon drinking buddies and say, "Yeah, I own a bank."
I own a bank.
And he had, as we studied the story, this billionaire investor had never set foot on the property in the whole existence of the deal.
Wow. That's yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah. How, and again, if there's a certain level of money where they just start investors of it, and then just never get too overextended and stretched. Wow.
And what had happened over the years as the bank, and all banks do, depending on
Hmm.
the economy around them, they struggle and times get tight and so
Yep.
forth. But in this bank's case, anytime there was a tightness, the chairman would just call his Dallas billionaire
Oh.
buddy and say, "Hey, we need another 20, 50, 75 million to float us." And he goes, "Yeah,
Wow.
sure, I'll transfer it, no big
Yeah.
deal." And they just kept infusing capital into what was fundamentally not a real well-run bank.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah, and isn't that too even right there a cautionary tale of when you go to make investments and partners and if you're the money person in a business and really know what they know about business, you've got to be there and be with that to understand that, or get somebody to support that guidance that can be your eyes and ears or your proxy to really understand what's going on in that investment, huh?
Right.
Awesome. Well, that was so let me ask this question. So in the bank in Puerto Rico, like, did they find any like, nefarious like underworld type of activity going on, or what did they? No, interesting.
No, what the ultimate thing that had happened, I think, in that scenario was, I mean, there is a good bit of financial corruption on the island of Puerto Rico. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
safe to
I've heard that. Yeah,
say, and
yeah,
I don't want to turn this into a political thesis, but I've got a theory of my own after learning what I saw. And, um, getting deals done it always involved greasing some palms,
Oh,
somewhere. I
yeah.
mean, if you needed to go to a city government to get a permit or a county government or even the state government, there was many layers of greasing palms to make things happen.
Yeah.
And much more so than we ever see or hear stateside. I mean, it goes on in a lot of other places, but yeah,
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's funny you said that. It's different cultural ways of doing things. When I lived in Hawaii, the amount of like governmental issues that I had seemed very excessive. And part of it was culturally, there's a lot of cultures kind of coming into Hawaii, is that certain cultures, it's kind of a way of doing business. And
Mhm.
I talked to a friend one who lived in Yemen for a while, and they said it's just there's part of this way of the way they deal, and the way that it's just part. It's a different way of doing it. It's not just here's the price, we go. It's always this dealing and stuff like that. So very interesting. Yeah. Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, think that was one heck of a story. I appreciate that one, and so I think that was great. So awesome. So now to the third segment is aligned intentional language, and this one is really about quotes or words of wisdom or things that have guided you through or created foundation for you to really kind of live your life on. And so, what do you got that comes into that area?
Well, your phrase aligned intentional language, I think the key word there for me and I advocated a lot with my own coaching clients, there is a magic to being intentional. And
Hmm.
as you enter in your activity for every day, you if you want the best outcome, you've got to be intentional with how you're going to structure your day, things you're going to get done, who you're going to talk to, what you're going to do. You got to get real good at being able to say no or no, not now, to people. And as a small business owner, I think it's so very easy to get sucked up in the minutia of the day, and if you turn out the lights at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night and close the shop and try to get home, you're realizing I didn't get half of everything
Hmm.
done that I
Hmm.
needed to do today.
Hmm.
Well, that's lack of intentionality
Yep.
because seldom do you run into situations that are absolute, fires that you just have to get in the middle
Right.
of. Do they happen? Yes, there are going to be
Yep.
things that happen, but for the most part, those are the exception, not the rule. And the entrepreneur that allows them to become the rule is not operating very intentionally, and I think
Yep.
that's a challenge. So, how do you be intentional? Well, it starts with your own understanding of your plan, your vision, your strategy, whatever you want to call it, and
Hmm.
breaking it down into those bite-sized pieces that you can go execute on day by day.
Yep. Yep.
And even if it involves, pulling your team together and delegating, all right, Brad, I need you to do this. George, you go do that. Sally, you do this. And, breaking it down and creating that clarity for them to understand how they can help you move the needle for the business.
Well, let me ask you this. So, like, as a coach, let's kind of peel that onion back for everyone here. When you look at, like, there's a lot of people logically, cognitively, we know that if I make a checklist for the morning, if I do these things, I'll be intentional. I'll have a great intentionality to my day. Why doesn't it happen? Like, there's so many that can, like, cognitively say, oh, like, if you ask probably 85%, go, oh, yeah, yeah, I know. Why doesn't it happen?
I think people are prone to gravitate to their own notion of a comfort zone.
Mm,
A little bit of study I've done in the realm of brain science, which I've found fascinating, is that our brains, according to most of the experts, their number one job is not to see us grow and expand,
okay.
but maintain our survival.
Hmm.
The brain's main job is just to keep you safe, keep you protected, keep you living another day.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, to your question, pushing ahead to maybe plow
Hmm.
into new ground or take on a new risk or
Yeah.
call a new prospect that you maybe never talked to before, that's uncomfortable. That can feel
Yeah.
threatening to most. And so your reptile brain kicks in and says, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to lay off on that. I'll do that another day. I'll think about that later."
Yeah.
And we go for that more of a comfort zone kind of feeling because what? That's our security and our protection.
Yeah, that primal masking, even making a new call, there's no threat to that. But the primal masking to the energy and the hormones and the stuff that gets released in the body, that's a fear response, and or that's a it is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what have you found successful in really kind of helping people um, sit with that anxiety, sit with that cognitive reptile brain, and then transfer to the the frontal cortex to be able to make a decision that says, I see the threat, I acknowledge it's not really that kind of threat, and I'm going to step through it anyways. What have you found is really I mean, one might be purpose, right? Like it transcends it, but is there like little things that you found that people do that work?
Well, I think the starting point is asking yourself the honest question, what's my mindset about this?
Hmm.
If I've made my list and I look at my list, the next question ought to be, what do I really think about these things on my list? I intuitively know I need to do them to move this project forward or move this business forward. Okay, I got that. But what do I really think and believe about these things? And that
Yeah.
is a mind game that every founder entrepreneur struggles with. And the
Hmm.
ones that really succeed have conquered their mindset about their business.
Yeah.
They've figured out how to properly assess and do, and even for the things they don't really want to do, but they know they need to do, they give it the right attention and move forward.
Well, and part of it too, like plugs for ourselves, right? With the help of coaches and people to assist them through to kind of that accountability and that reframing to be able to kind of walk that path through it, right? And
Right.
it's and you know what? It's funny. What a great profession that we get to is walk through and help people make that transition. And it's so funny just watching somebody grow like that and face that true fear, like that as far as their mind sees it, it's a true fear, and then be able to transcend that and step through to that next level. So, huh?
Yep.
Oh, awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the intentionalness, and it's interesting. I always say to people that it's impossible to worry while swinging a hammer. And the only thing you're focusing on is that nail and that thumb. And it's funny that as that focus and that intentionality comes in, and you raise that intentionality, the ability and space for that anxietal fear to show up, just it doesn't have space for it. It's not even that it just goes away. It's just that you don't have time for it. This becomes higher priority, and then it tends to take on a life of its own, and you see the reward, and then you chase it, and then yeah, that's what a cool thing.
Well, if you think about it at a very basic level, one thing every one of us, all human beings, share one common commodity, and that is the time in our day.
Hmm.
It's whatever
Hmm.
that math is, 23,640 or whatever that number is of seconds in the day. We all have it. We all
Yep.
get it. So, okay, you say you want to sleep 8 hours. All right, fine. You've
Yep.
just spent a big chunk of your day. That's great. No argument
Yep.
there. And now, not but and now, what are you going to do with the other 16? And
Yeah.
how are they going to stack up? And, you compare anybody anywhere in the world that you might aspire to be like, or you look at their success and say, wow, that's pretty amazing. Well, guess what? They got the same fundamental
Right.
resources
Yep.
you do.
Yeah. Well, and you know what too, and also that beautiful ability to understand those seconds are your seconds, and to take the positional ownership of that goes with intentionality, and said these are my seconds. I'm going to spend them intentionally. I'm going to spend them, and know that I'm not the victim of any spend of them. I chose because, like, for example, me, I'm a 9 hour sleep guy. And I know, like, I've tried, like, I can go 7 or even 6 for a couple days, right? And then I just crash out, and then now I do this. But if I get 8 to 9 hours of sleep, then all of a sudden I know that yes, I've lost 60 minutes of those, right? And I know the X amount of seconds, and I now have to reframe that day in a way that I better have slept enough that gave me this much energy that I can accomplish this stuff in that day, and then be happy at the end of the day that that's what I'm willing to leave on the table, on the shelf, or where I'm going to be. So, yeah. So, oh, awesome. Well, Doug, I want to thank you so much for your insight and your brilliance. The stories are amazing. I think this is exactly what I've always dreamed that the Greatness Garage would be. People can come in here, they can laugh, they can let their jaw drop, they can sit there, they can connect with the story, and really then and know that we're all in this business building together, and really connect and be that. And so, Greatness Garagers, I want you to know, if you want to check, Doug, you also have a podcast. What's the name of that podcast, and where can they find out about that?
Yeah, my show is called Leadership Powered by Common Sense. It's on all the major streaming services, and we have a YouTube video version of it. Same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense.
I love it. Well, thank you, Doug, so much. And everybody in the Greatness Garage, we love you. We appreciate you. Keep on working, and we'll see you back here next episode. Awesome.
Remember, action is what makes this information all worth it. If you need help figuring out what that action is, go to callwithbrad.com and we'll get some clarity and help you figure out what that should be.